Now, Artem, it's over to you. We are talking geopolitics now and politics globally in every sense. If I could ask you to focus it more and give it an assessment from the point of view of a practical business person. Where would you like to be 10 years from now? What sort of rules of policy do you expect to see around you 10 years from now? If we go back to the 14th century and the debate that existed back then, I want to go back to the words of the poet Andrei Bely, who lived more than 100 years ago. He called Russians Christian Chinese. Well, that's a way of putting it. As the only business person in this panel, I mean a practical business person doing business with our southern neighbors, I want to be very pragmatic. If 3 hours of flight time from Irkutsk, we have the capital of the country that uses 42% of global aluminum and more than 40% of global zinc and copper, and who last year became the biggest auto producer in the world, and so on. We can't simply ignore that. And Australia, for instance, mentioned by Mr. Ivanov here, Australia is the only one of the developed countries that did not have a slump in the economy last year, because 20% of Australian GDP depends on exports to China. For Russia, the figure is less than 2%. Russia today has a unique opportunity of getting access to this rapidly growing Chinese market and the market of countries neighboring on China. This market is only just developing. 90 million Chinese moved from villages to cities, and 250 more million are thinking about the same move within the next 15 years. It would be like the whole of the American population moving to New York to settle there. No other country has a better opportunity than Russia for gaining access to Chinese markets, including Chinese capital markets. North Australia to Shanghai is 12 days by boat. Brazil, that exports iron ore to China, has to travel 35 days. With Russia, it's just 4 or 5 days, or a few hours, or if you fly. We are the closest neighbor of China. So both our company and Rusal are now active in the Hong Kong metals exchange. And recently we bought a share in the Hong Kong commodities exchange. Such closer ties between our two countries, business-wise, are very, very attractive and promising. Now, Timothy, you have this unique position of a person who can summarize this serious discussion. So you will have the opportunity to be the last speaker in this big and serious discussion. What's your view on all these things? What's your take on that? I think I'll repeat the same question to you as I addressed to others. What rules will businesses in Russia be operating under 10 years from now? Will there be more or less presence of transnational corporations, for instance? What will it be like in doing business in Russia 10 years from now?
Well, let me try and summarize. I know we're running short on time, so I'll be very brief. Three main points. Number one, I think for all the reasons discussed, Russia is uniquely positioned between the East and the West to be a real impact, to have a real impact in what's happening on the world. Number two, I think we all need to hope that both the East and the West thrive and grow. 34 million people lost their jobs the last 2 years coming out of the economic crisis. There are 45 million people that come into the job market every year around the world. We have to replenish 34 million jobs and create 45 million jobs every year just due to the population growth. So we need both the East and the West to thrive and do very well as we go forward. As it relates to businesses and the rules going forward, I would point just to 4 things I think are important for any business as you look forward. Number 1 is to take a much broader view of the world. Sometimes we look at our stakeholders as our shareholders. We take a broader view of our stakeholders, not only our shareholders, but the communities, our employees, our customers, the governments, where we operate, and a much more long-term versus short-term point of view. Secondly, balance both global and local. There's not one business today, looking forward 10 years, that won't be impacted by the trends we've talked about here today. And you need to have a position of both a global mindset on what's happening in the world and a local presence in how you deal with it and understand it. That's very, very important. Another item that I think every business has to really focus on is a highly ethical organization built around trust and a foundation around trust. It's critically important. We've seen the lack of trust and confidence in business in the last number of years and the impact in the financial crisis. And looking forward, we have to earn that trust every day from all the stakeholders. And the last thing, and it was mentioned earlier today, adaptability, change. We talked about from the 14th century to the 20th century and all things that have happened and come back in full circle. I think we would all agree that while we've always been faced with change, this generation has been faced with change at an accelerating pace, and it's only going to accelerate going forward with innovation, technology, communication. So companies need to be comfortable in a changing world, adapt to what's happening around them, think long-term to be successful. So those are kind of the rules that I would look at as we look forward to a successful East and a West for all of us.
Thank you very much for the ideas you expressed and for the brevity with which you expressed them. We are way off on our time frame. So we need to take a vote, and let's do it now. You all have these little voting machines. Please pick them up and look at what you're holding. You press the green button to activate the device. And then choose one of the options that are on the screen before you. We have 2 questions we want to put to the vote. One is, will the world in 2020 be unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar, or none of the above? Choose the option you like by choosing by pressing the button with the corresponding number. You have 30 seconds to vote. Sergei, have you pressed your button? No, my first question was to Sergei Guriev. Now, we'll see how you all voted in a minute. So, will the world be unipolar, bipolar, multipolar, and I like the 4th option best. Perhaps it's a bit paradoxical after this long discussion we've had. Multipolar, that's a predictable one. Sergei Guriev, what would you say, commenting upon this result? Is that a predictable sort of vote? Oh, yes. I think all of those who took the floor here spoke about how the picture is much more complex than it looks. But even the way, if we take a superficial view of things, we can see that Europe and America and Asia and Russia are developing, and there is no simple definition, not just of the East and the West, but of North and South, where Australia, for instance, is North. And of course, the interesting thing will be where Russia stands on all that. Now, that's our second question to the vote. What scenario for Russia between 2010 and 2020 do you think is most predictable from what you heard today? Let me read that. The first option is rapid growth, 6 to 7% of growth per year. Second, slow growth and losing a leading position in the world. And number 3, economic collapse. Now it's your time to vote. So 6 to 7% rapid growth, slow growth with Russia falling behind the global trends, and complete economic collapse. You have these three options to choose between. Let's see how optimistic or how pessimistic our panelists and our guests are. We should have drums going. Slow growth, 54%. Rapid growth, 40% of the vote. Economic collapse, 4.7%. Andrew, could you comment on these results, please, very briefly? Do you think it reflects the state of affairs?
Microphone.
It's a little bit tricky, and I see that's why there's a lot of people voting for both number one and number two. I mean, Russia can grow at 6 or 7% a year and still find itself actually it'll be closing the gap with the United States and closing the gap with Europe, but the gap between India and China will be growing. So it's a little bit hard to answer in a straightforward way.
Very good. We have just a few minutes. If somebody would like to comment the two votes.
Well, very briefly, I think that this reflects that many people here think that there will be some substantial reforms, because right now Russia is on the slow growth trajectory.
Well, that was an optimistic statement from you, and perhaps we'll wind up hearing that. And I want to thank all of you for being here with us today.